Hey there, folks. We are gathered here today to talk about how do some people deconstruct from religion. So we have a group of people that come from widely varying backgrounds who have agreed to be wonderful and share their journeys. So I'd like for each of you to go around and introduce yourself and give a little bit of background, like what type of a religion you were raised in and your name, if you feel comfortable. You want to go ahead, James?
Oh, sure. Uh, I'm James. I was raised as a Jehovah Witness. So, one of those annoying people who came and knocked on your door every week and tried to peddle literature to you. And yeah, I left out of that just over 3 years ago now when I finally explored my doubts and researched into my religion to find out it was all a bunch of bullshit.
Okay. Thank you, James. You want to go next, Lacey?
Okay. I grew up Southern Baptist and Pentecostal Church of God, which was very, very close to Mennonite as far as that goes. I started questioning it around age 12, 13 and struggled for many, many years with mental health. Um, a lot of, I think, uneducated, willfully ignorant, and neglectful parenting choices by my parents and people of authority in my life. And about age 15, I got into an argument with a parent who was filling in for a youth pastor, and that ended up being a crazy situation. And over the last 15, 16 years, I've gone from that to agnostic to wanting to believe in something to just realizing the peace of mind and clarity I got when I finally just accepted that I really believe that it's just all bullshit. And the freedom that you get from that is, for me at least, was the most clarity I've ever had in my life.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm sorry you experienced that type of parenting. You
I
deserve to
appreciate
be
that.
treated better than that.
I
And
appreciate that.
would you like to go next, Isaac?
Sure. I'm Isaac. I was born to an atheist family who has like Jewish ancestry. So I grew up not believing in God. My mom told me there's nothing after death, all that kind of stuff. And I ended up falling into a cult when I was in high school, which kind of a strange cult structure because everybody in there was close in age, but we ended up going to some extremes in our behavior. I was one of the recruiters for the cult. I was married to the cult leader. A lot of sacrificing meat and thinking we were going to die and all that kind of stuff. It was a narcissist too, and I was in the cult for 5 years, and I left a little over a year ago after the cult leader went to jail. So,
Do you mind sharing what the name of the cult was?
we couldn't come up with a name. We kind of just didn't call it anything. Kind of like because our approach was just we know the truth about the world, so we didn't feel the need to do it.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Isaac, and I'm really thankful that you're here with us today. I appreciate it. Would you like to go next, Bartimus?
Yes, my name is Bartimus. I am a former Southern Baptist minister. Was in active ministry for about 10 years and was raised in the church. I was, Christian school, top of my class, graduated with the Christian Soldier Award, and then went off to Bible college, then served in active ministry before leaving.
Wow. So you were a good Southern Baptist, huh?
I think that's why I left, was I was a bad one.
Well, I mean, I always say I was a bad Amish, so I
Like
mean,
when you start talking
obviously.
about like community action and helping the poor and marginalized communities in your area, that makes you a bad Southern Baptist, and they don't want you around anymore.
Wow. That's really sad that that is the position of the church. Thank you so much for sharing that. What about you, Slew? What you got?
I was born and raised independent Baptist. I come from a small town and everything, some very ignorant views and all of that. Uh, and like I ended up, I don't know. I think I came out of the time that I'd come out of religion and everything was whenever I was kind of giving up on faith as an epistemology. And I'd say I was around when I was 24 or 25. It's weird to look at it now because it's kind of like it seems like it all unraveled at once, but still there was little things that picked away at it over the years too. And I went into deism for a little bit, and then eventually I started to realize that like atheism is just the answer to whether there's a God or not, whether and like I kind of thought I was agnostic for a minute, and then I realized that was a knowledge claim that you can be agnostic or gnostic of those things, and it's a separate claim to that. So I mean, long story short, I ended up basically transitioning to atheism and humanism, and Satanism lined up with all of that uh, whenever I joined the TST. So
So, for the people that are unfamiliar with it, would you mind explaining what agnostic and deism? Sorry, I can't say the word. That other word. That
deism,
one. Yeah.
deism would be basically, I don't know, it was kind of the point where I was thinking that there might still be something out there that's, maybe something got that put everything into motion, and just stood back from it. There's some higher entity out there, but I don't really know what. And it wasn't until I started listening to podcasts and things, and I mean, I started out listening to Secular Sexuality with Dr. Daryl Ray, and it's weird enough that kind of drew me in because I had so many questions and was just so much that was suppressed in those aspects. So I'd started listening to that, and then I'd started watching like the Atheist Experience, and the women that were on at the time, Jen Peoples was one of them, and they brought up the same exact things I was going through with deism, and it got to the point of like, well, if there is something out there, how would we determine that from nothing being there at all? And I'm like, oh shit, I can't. I how would you know if something just set things into motion? You didn't. So why would you come to that claim first? Because that's not how we work things out logically or reasonably in life. So it just kind of unraveled from there. Like, well, yeah, I'm an atheist. Um, I can be an agnostic atheist. I almost consider myself gnostic in that point of view, just for the fact that anything that we claim to know isn't within 100% certainty. But it's what makes the most sense and lines up with logic and reason and everything at the end of the day. And that's the same boat I'm in with that. So why would I treat it any differently? So I kind of teeter between like agnosticism and Gnosticism with that, because it's like, no, I don't know for 100% sure that this is right. But at the same time, we don't know that for anything. So why would I treat it any differently if it's such a minuscule thing?
So it sounds to me like what you experience is like looking at logic, and for you, it's a very logical thing to arrive where you are. Thank you so much for explaining those things for
No
people that
problem.
don't know. I appreciate it greatly. And so I'd like to talk about doomsday, or wait, first let's talk about fear based theology. Did any of your religions ever follow a fear-based theology? Like, for example, was it like if you did something, like for us, like the big one that they would say, the mushmagengip and the himagi conscious, like, you have to think about whether or not you're going to make it into heaven. We just don't know, right? Like, so there's like always this underlying fear of like whether or not you're going to make it into heaven. Did any of your religions follow that kind of fear-based teaching?
Abso-fucking-lutely. Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yes.
Minus the heaven part.
Yeah.
What was yours?
Well, see, with Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe that only a certain amount of people are going to heaven based off the scripture and Revelation. So they believe 144,000 are the ones that are going to go to heaven, whereas everybody else was going to be on the earth. And by everybody else, I mean only Jehovah's Witnesses, only baptized Jehovah's Witnesses, and only baptized Jehovah's Witnesses doing everything that their leaders tell them to do.
So, wow. So, what about the children born into the church?
They were considered, now when I was growing up, they were considered under their parents' protection, basically. So if their parents were baptized and in good standing, they would get in on their coattails, so to speak. But they, a lot of religions, including Jehovah's Witnesses, like to use the whole age of reason argument. And for witnesses, they've been kind of lowering that age lower and lower. And that's mainly just because their numbers are getting so low that they got to recruit people somehow because they can't convince adults, so they might as well convince children. So used to be when I was growing up, you would get baptized into the religion in your early to mid-teens. Now they're trying to get people in at like 7, 8 years old.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. And of course, comes with that when you leave, you have all the shunning from your family. It could be your closest family member. If you leave, they'll shun you, won't call you, won't email you, no contact whatsoever.
Will they sit down and eat with you or write you letters or speak to you in any way other than to have you return to the ways of, Jehovah?
Now they'll tell you that with family, your normal family relations continue, which is all a bunch of bullshit. About the only time they'll ever contact you is A, for what you said about trying to get the person to return to the religion, or B, if say a family member dies or something like that. But that's about it. Like my wife's parents are still in the religion and they don't contact us at all.
That's terrible. So
And
one
they
of our
have,
lists. Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was going to say, and they have 3 grandchildren too that they don't contact either.
So shunning doesn't only affect like the person that left the religion. If you have children, it falls on the sins of the fathers rest on the children in that case.
Correct. And my children were never baptized either into the religion, thank goodness. But my oldest now is 15, and then I have a 13 and a 6-year-old. So there was one time in the last few years that my mother-in-law tried to contact my daughter, but it was trying to get her to attend one of their events that they go to every year, which they do what they call the Memorial of Jesus Christ, where they basically commemorate Jesus' death. And basically, you Satanists will understand this. Jehovah's Witnesses basically do a version of Black Mass, where they reject the communion. So, except for the 144,000, if you believe you're one of those people, you partake. But if not, you just they have you pass it along and basically reject it. So my mother-in-law tried to get my daughter to go to that, and they didn't tell me for a couple weeks that she had done that, and I was pissed when I found out.
Do you think that ties into like children are easier to brainwash, like our listener said? Thank you,
Oh,
Colleen.
absolutely they are. I mean, you can tell a child just about anything growing up, and because you're their parent and they bite nature, children trust their parents because that's how they survive. That's where they get their food, their clothing, their housing, everything they need. So why wouldn't you trust your parent? And so if you're a parent raising a child telling them, hey, there's a sky daddy up there that's going to kill you if you don't follow XYZ rules, then he's going to kill you. That child's going to do pretty much what that parent tells them to. And that's why I think religions go for the children like that, because they're easier.
So, do you think that also ties into religions that, like, in my case, I grew up like learning a lot about, like, if if you don't do these things, then there's going to be ewig fire and brennen, which is like eternal fire and burning. Was that a thing that was taught in Jehovah's Witnesses as well? Any of you?
No, well, we weren't taught, we did not believe in eternal hellfire either. But the big thing they used was fear of Armageddon. So Armageddon was going to be God's war to rid the earth of everybody else except, the Jehovah's Witnesses in good standing, basically. And if you look at the numbers of Jehovah's Witnesses, there's about 8.5 million of them around the world right now. So God's going to come in and kill everybody else except 8.5 million people. And they often term it in violent ways that he's going to do it. And in their literature they produce, they have graphic images of people dying and being killed at Armageddon. So they really instill that fear of dying at Armageddon as a way of a control mechanism to keep them in.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. We do have another commenter talking about they've heard another XJW talk about parents using their children to try to leverage them back into the religion. Um, I think it's very common, from my understanding of Jehovah's Witnesses, that people use the children as a way to leverage their parents back. Like in my culture, like I was raised in a culture where I was taught that to be born Amish is a privilege. This is a privilege, and for me to not conform to Amish standards is me taking my Amish heritage and throwing it at the feet, like it's just throwing it. I am nothing. There is no hope for my soul. Have you ever
Yeah.
heard of that?
The way that we were raised, they didn't put it in such specific terms like that, but they made you feel like you were privileged to be born into, God's one and only true religion on earth. I'm sure nobody's ever heard that one before.
No.
And I mean, you haven't heard, because obviously Jehovah's Witnesses are the one and only true religion. I mean, come on, guys.
No, the Amish are the one and only.
Oh, no. Jehovah's Witnesses were. You got to get this straight now.
Hold up. Let's hear from the Baptists.
You guys just weren't true Christians. That's what your problem was.
Oh, no. You weren't doing things the right way. You weren't following the Bible.
Fallacy, right?
Oh, boy. So we all have our own little things, right? Where we're the one true. Wow. Interesting, Heathers.
Well, Slew said it right there with the fallacies. That's one of the biggest things that really started, when I started learning about those, that really started turning my tide towards atheism. And just like I watched The Atheist Experience, and that I started off on that show, and then I went on to all the other shows, Talk Heathen, Secular Sexuality, all those shows. And when they started talking about logical fallacies, and when Christians were calling in and giving the same arguments, and they just debunked them like that. I mean,
not just Christians, all religions. Like it's the same fallacies.
Oh yeah,
board with it, with the theistic religions, it seems.
I just said Christians because that's the majority of the people that call those shows, because of where it's at. But you're right. They have other religious people call too. Same exact fallacies, same exact reasoning to get to where they draw their conclusions. But the problem is they get their conclusions based off the premise that their religion is already true. And again, that's another logical fallacy. That's circular reasoning. And
Predisposition, yeah.
and when I
Presupposition.
started looking into logical fallacies and studying them a little bit and hearing them used over and over again, I'm just like, all these arguments are just a bunch of bullshit that hold no water. As soon as you spout out a logical fallacy, you've already lost your argument because you have no ground to continue on with it. And
I have a
so,
question out of curiosity. Sorry to interrupt. How many people in this chat were raised creationists? Were raised with creationism or anything to do with Ken Ham being basically God?
oh no, not Ken Ham.
So
Not
Oh
when
no,
it,
Ham, but
Ken
it's
Ham was
pretty
basically
amazing.
like, and that's really that age where I was always into science and animal biology, going to college for things like that.
3,000-year-old Earth.
Oh my
When-
god,
Bullshit, yeah.
yeah.
when so Ken Ham
6,000,
decided he was going
whatever.
to leave his home of Australia and move to the United States and build an ark in Kentucky. Now, when he did that, that made him a good Christian. But when Jim Jones left the United States to build Jonestown, that was a problem. And there's no
Right.
correlation.
Well,
wow.
Rupert Murdoch came here to build a media empire based off of the same shit. Like that was
Yeah.
fine too.
That's
Believe it or
really
not, though,
interesting.
Jehovah's Witnesses were more of older Earth creationists, not young Earth creationists. So
That's interesting.
we kind of believe that, like, and they don't teach us so much anymore, but they used to say like creative day was like 49,000 years. So that. So it kind of helped fit into what the science said about, the time, even though it's nowhere near it, but it was better than, the 6,000 year creationists, and
Wow. So
It's
they
funny because like one of the books by Daryl Ray that I'd spoken about earlier was The God Virus, and he talks about how
Yep.
religion kind of evolves over time to where it can take kind of one of two directions. It can either shut people out from it and just stay to itself and try to build that way, or it can go along with the cultures and things at the time and try to blend in and muddy the waters a bit, and it'll grow that way instead.
sorry, my dogs are barking in the background.
one of our listeners says they can't stand Ken, and then corrects Hoban. Anyways, so they
Well,
can't stand him.
well,
you go.
there is one version of him I can stand, is Dr. Josh Bowen's version of him.
What is that?
Oh, you just have to see it to find out. He's
Okay.
great. He's a biblical scholar. I actually had him on my channel for my last video I did, and if
Ooh.
if you go check that out, at the end of it, he brings in his buddy, which he does his impersonation of, but he does great with that.
That sounds fantastic. I'll have to check that out. So let's go back to, do Baptists, because now we got to hear from the Baptists. Do the Baptists follow like a fear-based theology?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
It's a
absolutely.
two-stage.
I'll be right back.
It's got two stages to it. The first is if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior for the forgiveness of your sins, then you will burn in hell for all eternity. The second fear, though, is let's say you've done that and they can't convince you that that you aren't saved in the first place. Then they dangle the idea that you're missing out on God's perfect will for your life. There's some kind of happiness within this lifetime and in the life to come that you're missing out on because you did not follow God's perfect will. And so there's always some kind of fear carrot that can dangle in front of you to try to get compliance from you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is like oddly familiar and oddly specific, and it feels really yucky. I don't follow those kinds of principles anymore.
I mean,
Hashtag facts.
it was very much a lot of fire and brimstone type of preaching and everything. Even though they like to try to shy away from that being their main point because of the evangelicism about it. Um, they're wanting to win souls to the Lord. That's kind of how they don't want you to go to that place, but you're going to go to that place. Like if you don't do these things. So yeah, it's still very much, and I think that is one of the logical fallacies as well as Pascal's wager, that they use, which is what you were speaking about earlier, was basically the fear of going to hell. Well, what if? But there's still a chance, right? There's still a chance that this hell exists. Well, there's a
Yeah.
chance of that for all of the other religions as well. It's just that you don't believe in those ones. You don't believe in those hells, but yours, that's the one, right?
Yes.
How
Yes.
are you distinguishing that? You know,
And then,
that's
like, who comes up with the rules that you have to follow?
right.
Where do those rules come from?
The arbitrary mind of whoever is holding the Bible at the time that they're speaking.
It's really
Narcissistic men, in other words.
Well,
okay.
I
then.
can
Sometimes
fix
they hold the Bible
Yep.
upside down.
I can fix the whole Bible in one line. In Genesis 1:1, I can change that line. In the beginning, man created God. Read the rest of the Bible from that viewpoint, and you'll understand it better.
That's an interesting concept to bring
God-
up. Thank you.
God created man in his own image, and we appreciated it so much we returned the favor.
That's interesting too.
But you got to
have a-
prove that God first.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, guys, look. The only version of Holland I can stand is the one in prison for tax evasion. I wish we could get that version back.
That would be my husband who keeps making those comments. So you're welcome for that.
That's amazing. I love it. It's a great
That is
comment.
so true.
So our next question is going to be: did your previous faith group believe in a doomsday teaching? How so, Bartimus? I see you nod your head.
It's okay. So,
Yeah.
the evangelical Christian believes that there will be a 7-year tribulation that happens after all of us good Christians are raptured off of the earth, and then during those 7 years, if you decide to become a Christian, you'll be killed by the Antichrist. And if you choose not to be a Christian, then Jesus will return on a white horse. A sword will come out of his mouth, and he will fill the earth with blood high enough to touch the horse's bridle of the horse he's riding on. So yeah, there's totally a doomsday.
So based off of visions, it's perfectly sane.
From a 90-plus-year-old man that was boiled in oil and then shipped off to exile.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
we had similar religious backgrounds, so that covers
Same.
mine too. You know, yeah.
Same.
What about you, Isaac?
I don't think we really had a doomsday situation in ours. I'm honestly trying to remember. Sometimes the actual specific beliefs get kind of muddled. I wasn't born into a religion. I helped create a religion. Like I was the second in command, and I was kind of abused into being that one. So sometimes I can't remember the specific beliefs we shared. And I don't remember him saying there was a doomsday, but there was like a lot of stuff that was insane like that. You know what I mean?
Was it
So-
fear-based theology?
There was a lot of different theology. I was convinced into my position for fear. I was told that my family was going to die. I was told that I was going to be kidnapped and tortured. He would I would hallucinate, and he would spur on the hallucinations and stuff. I had this belief that if I wasn't like in my position in the hierarchy in this cult, then I would kill myself. Like he told me that's what was going to happen, like prophesize in the future and stuff. So it wasn't like you're going to go to hell. There was no hell. It was like a bunch of different little things to terrify me into my position. And then my job was to spread it to other people. So I used fear on other people, but I wasn't actually given fear because like nothing was going to happen to my soul or something, you know?
No, it's just you were going to be killed, or your family was going to be killed.
Yeah, that's how it started. That's how it got me in my position.
Did you take anything to get those hallucinations at all?
No, I was stone cold sober the entire time.
Oh, wow.
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 There's no drugs in this cult, actually. One of the few New Age cults that didn't use like hallucinogenics. Well, I
Boy,
mean,
you were
the
missing
leader was
out.
on stuff. The leader
Did you
was
guys-
drinking cough syrup the whole time, but not me.
So did you guys implement things like music and stuff into it the way that a lot of religions do?
We had rituals.
Okay.
We spoke in tongues. Was one of them. I used to speak in tongues and get other people to speak in tongues with me.
There
Like,
is a part where people can see hallucinations and stuff just from being engulfed into that, having people together with that same mindset and everything, and then practicing these rituals and things over and over again until you're almost exhausted.
Mhm.
I don't know if that hits anything with that
Yeah, no,
or not.
you're
I'm just
right. Like,
curious.
so what he did was he would terrify me. It takes a long time to explain the whole story, so it'll be kind of broken up. He would terrify me with various things, and then he would keep me awake for nights on end with these kind of ideas. I couldn't sleep because of that. And then we were doing all these rituals out in the swamp where we would be trying to summon stuff. I don't know if I can cuss on here.
Feel free.
Okay, so we would summon stuff, and then I would be, out in the dark.
God's watching you. Don't do it.
Oh God, oh no. Should I apologize? Like,
On your knees.
I'm just doing
Closet or
here.
something,
I don't
right?
know what's happening.
I don't think God wants me after some of the stuff that I've done. So, and then I'd start seeing stuff because, I'd get these inclinations of oh, I see a scary shape over there, or I had sleep paralysis. And I'd see something spooky, and I'd tell the leader because I trusted him, and he was like, "Oh, that's real. That's super real, and you should think about it harder, actually." So he really spurred on my hallucinations to the point of being reality. Yeah, he really was like, "Yeah, just do that more." So that was what kind of kept me there, was I was hallucinating. And every time I talk about them, the leader would work it into the religion. So it was a religion that was being formed with me almost at the top of the hierarchy. So a lot of the beliefs are so much more fluid because I had a lot more control over the beliefs than the average member of a cult.
Thank you so much for explaining that, and I'm so sorry that he did that to you. That was unacceptable. That is not the way that people should be treated. And motivating you by fear of murder of your family, that's a really powerful motivator. And then also sleep deprivation does a lot to people.
I believe we call that duress, right?
Yes, that's under duress. That's not
Yeah.
even that's just horrifying, and I'm so sorry he did that
Under
to you.
any other circumstances other than religion, that would be duress. It's amazing how that does it,
But I don't think I could sue him. Yeah.
You don't think it's wet?
I don't think suing him would be viable, but I've considered suing him because, if it was happening now, maybe, but we were just under 18 at the time, and he has been to jail already, and his record's been sealed. So I don't know if it's worth it, to be honest.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I hope that someday you find, or even today, you might have some type of healing or even peace or resolution in your life. I really do. Because that's just, that's a lot.
Thank you.
So, James, we haven't heard from Jehovah's Witnesses' perspective. Do you have a doomsday?
Well, our whole doomsday narrative was Armageddon.
Armageddon for the win.
That's
okay,
right. It's going to be God's great war to destroy everybody but Jehovah's Witnesses. And, they, like I said earlier, they pound that into your head from the time you were born. Let's put it this way. I don't have the book on me right now. But when I was a kid, of course, Jehovah's Witnesses produce a lot of all their own literature. We had this big red book. It was about yay big, like this, and it was called Revelation, Its Grand Climax at Hand, was the name of the book. And it basically was a study of Revelation chapter 1 through Revelation chapter 21, and they had pictures in it to go along with their narrative of everything. And some of those pictures you'd see rocks on fire falling from the sky, killing people in the city, and people trying to hide from God's wrath to, survive from it. And of course, the narrative was even those people can't run and hide. There's nowhere they can go. They're going to all be killed anyways because God's going to find them and kill them all.
So when
Wow.
Armageddon comes, the safest plan is to find a Jehovah's Witness and just hug them, because the rock can't hit the Jehovah's Witness.
Well, I mean, they at least found the climax
I
of the
have a
Revelation,
question, though.
so there's that.
Well,
They did
well,
find the climax. But I have a question. Like, here's the thing. Is there consent? Like, are you going to ask permission before you hug a Jehovah's Witness?
If flaming
see-
rocks are falling from the sky, I'm pretty sure I'm not.
Well, see, with Jehovah's Witnesses, they're very much an ends justify the means kind of people, so they don't care about consent.
Oh my
I'd
God!
rather
I
just get
wonder
hit with a
if
rock.
I had a
Yeah,
Jehovah's
Still,
Witness.
like,
Is
They're
their Armageddon
sending-
story designed just to get people to hug them? Maybe.
Maybe.
Or listen.
They're sending out letters now. I got a letter in the mail from a Jehovah's Witness not that long ago.
yeah,
Yeah,
me
that-
too.
Yeah, me too.
I've gotten them too, which is really funny being an ex-Jehovah's Witness.
It looks handwritten and everything. I don't know.
Yeah, it is, because they're not going door to door because of COVID. So I'll give them credit for that. They're not going and
too.
spreading COVID. But they're still trying to, make their hours, because when they're knocking on your door, when they're writing you a letter, when they call you on the phone, they even have phone calls that they'll do. They are literally counting time for preaching because they have to report those hours to their leaders every month. And if you're not reporting those hours every month, you're not considered in good spiritual standing. And even at that stage, if you're not reporting hours like you, and
You got muted.
Yeah, you cut out.
Yep, he cut out.
It
We
sounds just like Christian-based Scientology is what he's describing.
I think
Well,
it doesn't work, James.
I had trouble distinguishing between, and I still do at times, between Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. I know they go by different theologies and
And the
such, but
Mormons
it's
dress
just
better.
So the
Yeah, I guess
Mormons
so.
is like, to my understanding from my friend, what I understand is they had this man named, I think his name was like Joseph or something. Don't quote me on that, but he
Had a
went out and
couple, I
he
believe.
it's like a
Yeah.
really really young religion, like a little over 100 years old. Like he
There's-
went out and he found these tablets and he did all
magic
of,
rocks and tablets and
you
things.
know,
yeah.
like, anyways, they're just wild. And of course, there's some Mormons that believe in like having multiple wives, which, in my opinion, you do you, but as long as it is like consensual. But is it really consensual if you've been brainwashed to believe that for your entire life? That's
Right.
Yeah. And we have another comment. It says, I grew up in a blue state around a lot of Protestants, Catholics, and Jews who thankfully showed me a much more balanced view of God than some of these extreme groups. Yeah, it kind of helps matters along if you see varying religions, doesn't it?
It's honestly, it still makes me cringe a bit because they're going by the same book. They're okay. Like we would always accuse other religions of cherry picking the Bible however they wanted, right? But they were doing the same thing in our religion.
Hey, James.
sorry, I got a phone call and then it cut out and I had to go close out and re-enter the studio.
Oh man. Well, welcome back. So you were saying,
on that, sorry, James. Before we move on, just on that comment, one of my greatest memories was we had this Muslim family in our community, and they wouldn't eat during Ramadan because that was their fasting season. But the mother of the house always cooked because it was time to cook, and so their way of kind of not evangelizing, not trying to spread Islam, but their way of ministering to their community was every Ramadan they would pick neighbors and bring whatever supper the wife cooked to the neighbors. And so I believe you can have religion as part of an eclectic cultural item without necessarily being radicalized like we've seen so many of our religions that we came from today.
That's a very good point, Bartimus. Thank you. All right, back to James. James was explaining to us how people have to report their field service hours, right? Is that
Right.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah,
Because why?
because that is basically a gauge of your spirituality and of how strong of a Jehovah Witness you are. So at minimum, you want to put in about 10 hours a month of knocking on doors, writing letters, making phone calls, standing in line at the grocery store trying to convert the person in front of you. I mean, they want you to do
I,
it no matter where you're at work, at school, everywhere.
I hate to interrupt, but like, did these things, did these get you rewards in heaven, or like that's kind of the way that the church I grew up in was that you did these. So we had believed like that Jesus, you had to believe that Jesus came, died for your sins, and all of that, and that got you into heaven. But there was rewards and stuff that if you did, you did all these right things and everything, that would get you into heaven. And evangelicism was part of that.
Well, again, remember, like I said earlier, only 144,000 go to heaven in the Jehovah's Witness theology. So you wouldn't get like extra rewards or anything. The ones who didn't go to heaven were to inherit the earth and make it back into a paradise. But they always would say you're gaining treasures in heaven, so God's looking favorably upon you for the works that you're doing.
How does that number work? Is that like, I mean, new people are born every day. So is there a cutoff point where your religion just ends all completely? Like, I'm confused on that aspect of it.
Oh man, you opened up such a can of worms with that question, man. You really did.
I'm sorry.
You really. And here's the reason why. Okay, because they used to believe in a cutoff day, basically, for that number. Okay, and also let me go back a little bit further. They believe that number began after Jesus died. So like the people who died after Jesus that followed him or whatnot could be part of that 144,000. So we're going back 2,000 years of people that could be part of that number. Okay. Now they were called Bible students at first. The Jehovah's Witnesses were called Bible students before they changed their name to Jehovah's Witnesses. There's actually still a movement of Bible students, but that's a whole other discussion. But they used to teach that by 1935, that number for 144,000 was going to be cut off and sealed, right? Well, that didn't happen because then in 1935, Jehovah's Witnesses have what they call new light, okay? They take that scripture out of Proverbs about the light getting brighter. And basically we were wrong the first time, so we got to come up with something new now. And that's how they keep the witnesses, even to this day, trapped into the religion.
Wait, wasn't it Paul? Yeah, I mean, wasn't it Paul that thought that the second coming of Christ was going to be within his time?
Yeah.
I just see striking similarities there with all of that.
Did they sing "This Little Light of Mine"? I just want to know, like, when they changed this, like, did they sing that song? Because I feel like it would have been appropriate, or is that too Christian?
Jehovah's Witnesses have their own songs. They don't sing any of your other false religious Christian songs.
No, we did the same thing in Baptist. Like in our church, they did not like what do they call that? There was something about the music, like if it went against the heart rate or whatever, the timing and everything, then that wasn't. Bartimus, do you know what I'm talking about? I can't think.
The idea was that when the beats per minute hit a certain ratio, that something happened in the brain and caused you to gyrate.
Yeah.
And then you would be moved with
Yes.
lust to fornicate.
Yeah.
Really?
Rock and
Okay.
roll came from
Well,
rocking and rolling in your car or whatever. Like, yeah. Yeah, it
I
was all
mean,
part of that.
okay, so we didn't have like inside of the Amish communities that I lived in 5 different ones, right? As far as music goes, we didn't have some, like maybe 3 of the communities or even 4 of them. They allowed us to play harmonicas. Okay, that was it. We were not supposed to play harmonicas and sing along with it.
Would have been
And
way better if it was kazoos.
the church singing, oh my god, like the church singing, we have 2 specific songbooks that are published by Amish publishers, and they're called the Ausband and the Little Singing Book. So the Ausband is the big, thick church hymn book, and like we're not really supposed to sing too many of the outside worlds, like those religion songs, because it can lead to a funny hoglava, which is like a funny belief for some reason or the other.
We sang old hymnals. Syncopation was the term I was trying to think of. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it was syncopated, then they didn't like it. And even there were some older hymns that were syncopated that the pastor that we had that came in, he didn't like that at all. Like
Yeah.
he would not listen to anything other than music that didn't do that, I guess.
And then another thing is like, oh my God, like we weren't allowed to inside of those 5 communities, we were not allowed to harmonize. Like, so that was considered like a terrible thing, right? And then if we sang
Well,
like
that was
old hymns,
So you're all
they
just singing out of tune, like to keep from harmonizing with each other?
well, no, because you get the
seriously,
melody and then the harmony, and if you sang the harmony, that was a sign of pride. You wanted to be different.
Demut ist die schönste Tugend. I'm
Does
telling
that
you.
does that
Well-
mean my bagpipes are broke? Like that sounds like.
No, Demut,
I'm sorry.
Demut, I don't even know how to translate that right now. I'll think about it and I'll let you know. Um, Look, we got somebody who's one of the 144,000.
What date? Like, let's get
What
a good
date?
consensus on
Please.
this.
Please enlighten me on what date we can expect this.
Which one of the 144,000 are you?
Yeah.
I'm the first one.
I'm number 666.
They gotta be getting up there, right? Like, that's all I'm saying is like 144,000 out of the world and everything. Well, no,
Yeah.
because isn't it based around? So what? Do you guys do you spread this word throughout the world, or is this just for the United States?
Oh, it's worldwide.
Because isn't like all of this based on? It's weird. I don't understand it completely. It's like you've got the Bible, but you've also added these other things to it, which the Bible says not to do. But then you have people that are, you've got all of this other stuff with it to where it's like these prophets or whatever, that they came to the United States and did these things here as well.
I think you're thinking about the Mormons right now with that one.
Oh, that's where I freaking get confused. That's what I was just saying. I confused the Mormons with the, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the witnesses don't believe in having prophets or anything like that. Because
Okay.
that's all basically not in effect anymore. Because
How do
we
you
have the
even know
complete
there's a-
Bible.
But the Armageddon is a prophecy. How would you? How?
Yeah, I wonder that myself.
Okay,
So
I'm just wondering. Like,
it just doesn't make any sense, does it, sometimes? So we have a comment that says the biggest mistake that JW's made as a religion was making predictions with hard dates in the near future. Would you agree with that, James?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They the most recent hardcore date that they made, and I say this because they actually published it in their literature, was 1975, and that's a big bone of contention with a lot of ex-witnesses. Now, my parents lived through that one as well, and So that was the last time they actually predicted an actual date. Then later on, they tried to say, well, by the end of the century, by the end of the 20th century, and now they just say it's going to come soon. It's any time now. It's just around the corner. Keep waiting, keep anticipating, keep doing everything we tell you.
Like a thief in the night, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Like
But don't
the
worry.
pangs of distress on a pregnant woman.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry though, because we're going to be the first, the sixth, and the 666 and
And
71,865.
65, yeah.
We got this. We got this. Anyways, welcome back, Lacey. Uh, we have time, I think, for one more question. Uh, did your previous faith group believe in world domination? We were kind of talking about that a little bit, so I would think it's safe to say, did the Jehovah's Witnesses believe in that or no?
I guess in a sense you could say they did because they believed in everything becoming one world government eventually under their theology. So I guess you could say yes.
What about you, Isaac?
I was never specifically told to attempt world domination, but I think if I was told to do it, then there would have been
Yeah,
a continued effort to try it. Our recruitment process was more my leader being like, I remember this person from past life. We need this person for this specific reason, and then my job was to go after them, and, like, get them in the cult, basically. So like we were just kind of picking random people. At least that's what he was doing. I didn't think that, but I think if he
yeah.
thought he could have got something from taking over the entire world, he would have tried it. And I think he's going to try at some point to do that. So look out for that.
Wow. No, thank you. That's just wild, though. Like thinking about them taking over the world and all of that. That's wild. What
I
about
think
you, Lacey?
someone's going to kill him first.
Maybe. What about you, Lacey?
What was the question again?
Did your previous faith group believe in world domination, like taking over the world, one religious?
I'm not gonna say no, but I'm not gonna say yes. I feel like it was somewhere in the middle. The ultimate goal of my religion was to evangelize and spread the word. So yes, kind of, but non-violently. Like
Okay.
I don't know. That's kind of a weird. It was kind of an in between. Like no, but yes, at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Would you care to also chime in, Slew and Bartimus?
So there's two scriptures that the Southern Baptists really push. The first one is the Great Commission: "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." The second was when the world ended, it said that every knee would bow and every tongue would confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And so those were the two driving forces in proselytizing. Like if you were already a Christian and they were trying to get you motivated to go out, then you were doing the will of God by winning more souls.
Wow.
So did you preach to the animals too? Said preach to every creature, right?
Exactly, but no, we did not preach to animals.
So you get attacked by a raccoon that you're trying to
Yes,
coerce.
you can rebuke them in the name of God and invite you.
So, wow, just wow. So did you preach? What about armadillos or porcupines? Did you Did you preach to the porcupines?
We did not. They were generally too prickly and abrasive to our message.
What about black widows?
Well, I mean, your faith must not have been strong enough, because that dude that went over to that island that got shot by arrows and everything, that didn't stop him.
Well, my faith was only the size of a mustard grain. And I moved mountains.
Oh, okay.
I tell you what opened my eyes to a lot of the Christian dominionism in my church and everything was there's a podcast called Straight White American Jesus, I believe. And they talked about Christian dominionism. I'm like, holy shit, that never struck me as that's exactly what they were doing with the evangelical thing with it, and the whole structure of wanting Christian people in our government and everything, and all of that. That's exactly what that was running into. But it just never seemed that way while I was in it, and it was weird to hear it talked about, and then be able to put it just fit everything that I'd grown up in.
So it kind of helped you explain like what you believed, what was your religion, what was what you obtained from the culture around you. Is
Yeah,
that what I'm hearing?
I know that mine wasn't the only sect of Christianity that this pertained to either. Like, there's plenty of others. It's just, how do they cherry pick that shit out to where it fits into their little narrative? Because even the verse that Bartimaeus gave, there's also verses where Jesus said not to evangelize these certain areas at that time.
Hmm.
So it's like, did you want to spread the message to the whole world, or did you not? Because one verse is saying something completely different than the other. And I mean, you could go as far into that as what you wanted, as far as breaking down the history of the texts and everything themselves, because like the majority of the New Testament, you don't, there's nothing to back it outside of that. And everything seems like a rendition of the same little story.
Well, that's really interesting you mentioned that because I was watching this documentary that's called Marketing the Messiah. Have
Oh
any of
yeah.
you watched that? And then
Yep.
I have another exclamation to make. Just imagine my shock and my surprise. Like, first off, like reading the Bible led to my beliefs like completely like deconstructing. Like they just completely blew up and changed and evolved over time. But then one of the things that was really, really shocking to me was to think about one, that Jesus is not necessarily white. If you want to say that he existed, he was born in a country where people are predominantly brown. White people don't live there. And you should have seen my face. Oh, I was mind blown.
Well, it's amazing too because we're talking about these religions that are saying that you're the chosen ones. No, the chosen ones were not the same color as us at all. Like, how do you even get by that part of it to say that you're chosen? How?
Well, I have to be chosen. If you disagree, I want to see a manager.
Yeah, but God is not partial, remember?
Wait.
Oh, but he is.
Except for
I'm just
140
reading the
days.
wrong
Except for
Aren't
when
we
he
not
is, yeah.
aren't we not supposed to question God?
Abraham did.
Really?
Yeah. Remember Sodom and Gomorrah?
Are you telling me that if I can't find 50 righteous in the city, you'd still destroy the city with the innocent with the guilty?
Of course, let's not continue on with that story and to its finality with Lot and his daughters in the cave, okay?
Okay.
Let's not even talk about the drunken father in the tent, okay?
Anymore, I even see it as like it's almost like the ultimate comedy. The scriptures to me just seems like this big comedy of this all powerful, all knowing, all seeing, entity that has created things to purposely piss himself off. Like, how the fuck? Why the fuck? Why would you ever do that? It makes no sense at all. Like, he's created his own rules to things that he could have easily not created. He could have put more in that were more beneficial to mankind to begin with, but he didn't. He did all the things to piss himself off and then take it out on the people that he created. It's just it doesn't make any sense. Like, when you start looking into it.
Oh, but
Oh, yeah.
like
And
Well,
when you put
Jesus
it that
came,
way,
but
and when
then
you put it
Jesus
that,
came. Sorry, I have to say this. When
Yep.
Jesus came, he died for everybody.
Oh, but he didn't come to contradict the law or anything. He came to enforce that shit, right? Because that's in there as well.
In our version, it said that the New Testament came and that changed everything, and now we should only follow the New Testament, which is always confusing to me because you're using verses from the Old Testament and using them to justify mistreatment of people or even justify the clothing rules you have in effect today. But anyways, we're almost at time, and Lacey had something to say. If you want to go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you wanted to compare the Bible to a comedy of an entity pissing himself off, just go on Disney Plus and watch The Eternals, because that's basically what that is.
I've never seen that.
It's just a Marvel comic book movie. It's just basically that in a nutshell, a creator pissing itself off to torment the things it created. So,
yeah.
you know.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Do y'all have any parting words for our listeners? And can we come back and do another one where we continue with these questions?
Oh, I'd love that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. And we have a whole list of questions for the next one. So we're going to schedule that and we'll see everybody next time. I hope everybody's having a fantastic day.
Can I plug my podcast?
Go ahead.
I don't want to steal your thunder. I feel like I've been asking questions too this whole time, but I'm just so curious about.
No, go ahead. Plug your podcast.
I got the Skeptical Satanist. It's on YouTube right now. I've got a Patreon. I haven't done much with it. I'm trying to get it started back up again. COVID and things. It's put a damper on everything and mental state and all of that as well. But I'm working on getting it back up again, and I hope you guys like and subscribe to it and check it out. I'm really glad to be on here, and this has been awesome being able to talk to you guys.
Say the name again.
The Skeptical Satanist.
And for those who are unaware, James also has a podcast as well.
Okay.
Yep, I do. My channel is former 2 free XJW. It's number 2 in the middle. I talk with other XJWs and how they journey out of the religion. I've done some videos on logical fallacies. I talked to this crazy Amish lady one time, but she was pretty cool in the end.
I don't talk smack. Look, I'm good.
No,
I'm
no.
a good Amish person.
I do want to plug one more thing, and that's recoveringfromreligion.org and seculartherapy.org. They're very good. If people are questioning their faith and everything, and are really confused or trying to find answers to things, I would definitely recommend to check them out. And if you're having trouble finding a therapist in your area that isn't kind to religious trauma and stuff you might be experiencing, I'd recommend seculartherapy.org as well.
Thank you. And on that note, are we ready to say goodbye? Bye, folks. Have a good day.